everyone. Welcome to our Exploring AI webinar. We'll just get started here in a few minutes. Just want to wait for everyone to join the Zoom. Welcome everyone to our Exploring AI webinar. Again, I'm just going to give another minute or so for everyone to join the Zoom. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. Welcome everyone to this episode of our Exploring AI webinar series. Today we have Matt Fisher and Jason Hallman here to present on all the latest and greatest Bullhorn AI features. Before I pass the baton over to them, I did want to quickly go over some housekeeping items. So first of all, everyone will be on mute for the duration of the session, but we do encourage you to ask questions in the dedicated Q&A panel. And if we don't get to your question during the session, we will follow up with you directly. And then lastly, the session will be recorded and sent out tomorrow in an email to you all. And so with that, I will hand things over to Matt and Jason. Thank you all for joining today.
All right. Hi, everybody. Hi, Jason.
Hey, how are ya?
What's up? So this is episode 5. It's been a while since we've done one of these. Before we get into the details of the product, we just want to do a quick recap of, our view on what's been happening with AI and what we talked about on our previous webinars, because since it's been a while. So I think the first thing is that the trend of sort of rapid progress it's not slowed down. It continues. There's news every day. It's pretty noisy. There's a lot going on. And in the end of the day, all of this tech needs to be applied to recruiting. And that's what our focus is. And it's basically taking all of this horizontal technology, whether it's LLMs or Agentforce or whatever it might be, and verticalizing it and making it work in our space and on our platform. And so there's a few things that are required in order to do that. And we've talked about this in previous webinars. And the first is sort of digitizing all of your processes in the cloud. Everybody's done that. That's obvious. And what we're going to walk through is how AI assistants and all this agentic AI combine to transform all of your business processes that have already been digitized on the Bullhorn platform in the cloud. And that's only really possible if all of your workflow is in one place, because you're going to see that where the human gets involved in all of these flows is dependent on what you're trying to accomplish. And so all your processes have got to be digitized, and then we can start thinking about how do we assist the recruiter and salesperson, and then how do we completely transform that workflow and have it be done in an agentic way. To that point, it's not just about having all of our processes digitized. It's also about the sea of data. We talk about this in every webinar. It's not just a tagline. It's really important. And the reason is because we have the single largest repository of staffing specific data in the world. You might say, okay, maybe that's obvious. Why does that matter? But it matters because we understand more than just the resume and the profile. We actually understand the outcomes and what happens to those profiles as they progress through the recruitment process. And the reason that's important is because the goal is for AI to find the right candidates. And so you have to have accurate matching to do it. And our models are the most accurate because we have the most data. It's the most specific data. It's the largest and it's actionable. And that's important because you have to be able to trust that the matching is good if you're going to convert to an agentic flow. where there's less human involvement, more human supervision. The SIA data is important because it's going to make sure the matching is accurate and right. And that's really important. And I think, we've talked about that a lot in previous webinars, and I think it's just a point to underscore. So now that everything has been digitized, there's this aspect of automation, and this was very much what was happening from 2020 to 2024. We have about 60% of our customers that are using automation, and the reality is it drives a step function increase in productivity, and it is also required for AI to orchestrate how the assistants and the agents actually work together. And it means that people that have been using Bullhorn automation are essentially 36% more productive. We measure that by the increase in placements per recruiter as compared to folks that are not using automation. And so it is an important component in order to actually get the benefit of assistants and agents. And so the way I want everybody to think about it is AI assistants and AI agents are going to take you to the next level, and it's going to help compound that productivity. So you've already taken this first step, which is 36% improvement in productivity with automation, and this is just the next step in the journey. And so you can reasonably expect that AI assistants and AI agents are going to create more and more productivity. We sort of took a crack at what we think those numbers are, but 20% for an assistant, 20% for agentic workflow. And the way that this ends up compounding is, reasonably you can assume that your productivity prior to automation and after AI will probably be about 2x. And if you just look at it in raw numbers, you've got, like, let's say you're making, we just made this up just to make the point, but let's say you're making 10 placements per recruiter. You know that if you use automation, you're now making 13 already. And if you compound 20% on top of that with assistance by making recruiters more efficient and more productive, you're making 16, and so on and so on. And so I don't know what you think here, Jason, but I think it's a very reasonable position to say that you can go from pre-automation to post-AI and see a doubling in your productivity, and a proof point with automation that that's not just sort of a pipe dream, that's possible.
That's right. And it's not only can you expect this compounding interest on your productivity, the way that these things are delivered rely on one another to create that compounding value, right? So like in automation, it allowed you to automate many of the tasks that people are doing today. Automation combined with AI allows you to expand and do more of those tasks, more of the things you're already doing. So we really think of this as an evolution of automation to just do more of what you're already doing. You've taken a bunch of tasks off your recruiter's plate. AI just allows you to do more of those tasks, or do it that at a higher volume, or do it more personally. So that's another important part of this is this interest does compound, right? So like this, we wanted to do the math because it just doesn't mentally seem like we couldn't just tell you you're going to double your productivity. But if you can imagine a world where you've already seen automation dramatically change your outcomes, and it's just a little bit more, 20%, yeah, maybe that's a big number. But you can see how it's reasonable whenever you've had people using these tools. And this is what we've heard from our customers as well. So then, to Matt's point, let's talk about what these tasks actually are. So today, we already have people who are taking this process of syncing jobs from the VMS and automating each of the steps in the workflow. But those customers are relatively few. AI just allows you to take each of these steps and do things that weren't possible, like enriching the job, right? Like taking a basic job description that you got from your customer that says Java developer, project manager, nurse, and expanding that out to something that's actually interesting and useful for your recruiters and for your candidates is something that absolutely AI can do, and we can do it at scale. Matt talked about matching, right? Like taking your entire database and identifying the most likely to be hired is just become dramatically better. And again, it can be something that you do with your recruiters running it, or you can have it automated in the background. Personalizing your messages, you don't just have to use templates anymore. You can actually take the candidate and the job and create a very personalized message. So this is this unique boundary between what is automation and AI versus what is human. And we kind of think that it isn't a boundary, it's a blending, and all of this allows your people to be more human.
Yeah, I think that's the key point. It's like you can figure out how to infuse this across your business process. And in some cases, like a VMS example, you're going to get quote unquote productivity because you're just able to touch jobs that today you're not even working. Whereas in other cases, you may be able to more effectively qualify the top of the funnel. So by the time the recruiter is actually engaging with the talent, they're talking to people that are more qualified than having to sift through all of the applicants and figure out, who's the right person to actually be successful in this role. And so I agree. I like the blending concept, and I think that's more accurate because I think it's about how to actually apply it in the most effective way based on the use case that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, and if you think about what your recruiters are really the best at and the people that you hire, they're great. They're people. It's a people person, it's a people business. And they are great at persuasion and communication. And if you look at these things that are now grayed out that automation and AI can do, these aren't necessarily the things that they're great at. Data entry, um, running detailed searches and identifying the nuance. I'm not saying that some aren't, but the vast majority of your people are really good at just interacting with humans. So this just gives them that much more time to build real relationships and and take the time to interact with the candidates. And we'll talk about the candidates' perspective on this as well. Hint, they like it a lot, but it helps everyone to have kind of more personalized communication and relationships.
Yeah, let's unpack that a little bit because I think there's some sort of like some myths around the talent side of things that I think we have some data on that I think will be helpful. But before we do that, what's the main point here? And we try to keep this as simple as possible and just figure out. I think it's on the next slide, Jason. The point here is that, and we're going to explain why this is possible, is essentially to make more placements and more gross profit with the same team that you have. And it all ties back to what Jason was talking about in terms of automating a lot of the top of the funnel activities. And so if you think about what is happening today, we're actually suggesting that the recruiters will have the same amount of engagement or the same number of conversations with people as a result of using agentic AI. And today, those recruiters are talking to 10 candidates. Well, what happens when your recruiter is talking to 10 candidates today? There's half of them that are totally unqualified, right? That applied to a job and they have to spend their time figuring out whether or not they should even be considered to move on to the next step. Then there's three people that are like, I don't know, maybe they're a possible fit. I have to talk to them a little bit more. And then there's a few of them that are an obvious slam dunk. And the point is, if you can use agentic AI in the top of this workflow, you're going to increase the number of slam dunks and decrease the number of unqualified people. And so the recruiter is still having 10 conversations in this case, right? But they're having 10 conversations with strong, qualified people. And as a result, they're going to push more people through the process. And the time to fill recs is going to come down because they are talking to more highly qualified people up front. And they're not sifting through all of the noise and trying to find the signal through the just myriad of applicants that you have to jobs. And so that's the concept. And not only is that a concept, we've actually seen that be true with the folks that have started on this journey already. And there's, these four KPIs that everybody always thinks about. There's an obvious effect by what I just said happening to them, which is the number of screens that you can make per job. That used to be bound by the number of calls that somebody could make, right? Or the number of like really high level chatbot interactions somebody could have that weren't nuanced and weren't specific and couldn't really dig into somebody's fit. That's essentially limitless now because AI can do that with impunity. You can scale that with impunity and have as many screens as you want. So you're going to see that's a KPI in your business as a leading indicator to placements per recruiter and time to fill. You're going to see that go up. You're also going to see the number of jobs that you can touch go up, jobs with a submission or a placement, because you can there's Jason, we talk about this all the time. We look at the number of jobs that are in customers' databases. There's even in this climate where growth is relatively hard to come by, there's still jobs that are untouched that you just can't get to. And so this solves that problem as well.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about, especially those of you who do VMS work, I bet you would look at your database. Maybe it's not half, but it's pretty close to half that probably don't have a submission, unless you've got SLAs with certain customers, right? But I would almost guarantee that it's over half that don't have a placement, right? So that math can totally change because you're currently, as Matt described, you're resource constrained. You just can't work all these jobs. You don't have enough people to talk to the people. So we got to move one of those
You're
people out, right?
and you're forced to prioritize, which is the right decision because you obviously want to deploy your best people to your A jobs, right? The ones that have a highest likelihood of you actually being successful on. But there's low-hanging fruit all over the place. And, it sort of sleeves off your vest to use an agentic workflow for, these jobs you're not covering anyway. And so, I think that's just an added benefit to this, right? In addition to the obvious productivity increases that you'll see. And then, obviously, placements for recruiter will go up as we've talked about. And if you're talking to more qualified people up front, you're going to, by definition, decrease the time to fill on these jobs. And so that's kind of like the lens if you look at the way that, we kind of currently measure productivity and we currently measure the KPIs. But I think there's also some new ones too that I think are worth talking about because when you move to an agentic approach, you got to measure things differently too.
Yeah. So right now, you again are rightfully so looking at the number of internal interviews that people are completing. You're looking at the number of submissions, the number of internal interviews, the number of external interviews. But now we're going to be screening so many people that now what we're going to be looking for are people who have a really good screening score, but haven't been submitted to one of your clients. So someone that came through that previously would have been missed and you'd be okay with, right? Like we have very few customers who have internal requirements that every applicant get a message back, right? Like we all would love to. Automation helps with that. But what we do know is that we're foregoing some level of qualified applicant because we don't have time to look at them all. With this screening process, you now have the ability to make sure they're all screened. We've got a sense of how good of a fit they might be for certain types of roles. So if someone does well, you absolutely need to talk to them. And that's an important metric that we should track against recruiters and the company as a whole. Then we've got the interviews booked. Again, very important that we've got candidates interviewing, but we should make sure that we look at people who have been interviewed and don't have a hire and aren't submitted to another job. Again, this is just the idea of the place we're looking for is to get you to a world where you're working with way more qualified candidates because you're not spending time with unqualified ones. So once you've identified one, you can spend more time allocating them out and making sure that they're finding the right role for them. Then ultimately fill rate. You'll still probably track fill rate, but you also want to now start watching your jobs where you don't have submittals. And we think you should be able to get that number to 0. Every job that comes in with this tool, you might actually, in some cases, I don't know if this is right yet, but you might actually not have for certain level of roles actually even have a human talk to someone. You might fully automate this process if it's a VMS role that's relatively transactional. You might be able to submit to that point.
Yeah, and so this is sort of we've been talking about it for a year or two now, which is sort of optimizing the recruiter and up leveling their role. And now it's sort of like it's all about building those relationships and it's about ensuring that the right candidates are moving through the process in the right way. And it's sort of a little bit of a conceptual, realignment about what the recruiter's role is. And also, we'll show you some analytics when we get into the product here in a second too, because the recruiter becomes a supervisor of these agents, and their job is now, I'm going to talk to the most qualified people. I'm going to convince them to go to work at wherever. But I'm also going to make sure that all of the agents that are doing all of this stuff are doing what I expect, and I'm going to be spotting the exceptions, and I'm going to be digging into those things. And sort of, it's like the role will evolve in a very positive way because all the low value things that are happening today are going to be handled by AI. And so that's one thing. So there's this myth. There's these two myths, right? One is this is somehow, going to replace a recruiter. I strongly do not believe that. I believe in what Jason and I are saying. It's going to change their job and it is going to elevate them and amplify them. I don't think it's going to replace them in any way, shape, or form. And there's the second myth, which is talent don't want this. They don't want to engage with AI. And I think we have enough data here to say that that is also really not true. And we do a grid survey, which I think a lot of folks know, and we survey large swaths of talent. And I'll talk about the first couple data points, and then Jason can talk about our own products and how they sort of perceive them. But the vast majority of talent, 81%, are comfortable working with AI if it speeds up the process. The number one criticism by talent is this black hole thing, right? They apply to something, they're not only do they not get a response, but they don't get any feedback as to whether or not they could be a fit at a different job or why they didn't get a response to the job that they applied to or whatever, right? They get nothing. And so they are very focused. Your talent wants to speed up the process, and they want to receive responses. And that's I think a very high number that we shouldn't ignore. Like this is something that they would prefer versus their current reality. And when I talk to folks about this, there's always this like, oh, we're going to compare an AI talent experience to this utopia of a recruiter that's always picking up the phone and responding to everybody and giving them wonderful feedback, and they're doing it really quickly. But you and I, we all know that utopia doesn't actually exist. And so I think the right thing to do is to compare the talent, the actual talent experience you're having with how it could be better with AI. And in that case, even the talent will tell you it's way better.
Yes, for sure. And specifically to some of the solutions we've talked about today, we've got customers using it, and this kind of AI screening agent, right? So we haven't gone through the demo yet, but you can imagine a job opens, you send a message to the candidate. This is kind of like the S we were showing, and they take a conversation with an AI agent. Those of us who have been recruiting for a long time, at first blush, that does seem somewhat intimidating and you're not sure. But now we can be sure. We've surveyed all of the people who have taken these, and 82% give this experience either an 8, 9, or 10. And that's very high. And the reason why is they get a chance now where they wouldn't have before. We all know candidates have AI tools at their power. I saw an article the other day that someone wrote how they applied to 1,300 jobs in a month. Like, and it was like, oh, here's how I only got one job out of 30. But like, they applied to 1,300 jobs. How interested were they in those jobs? Probably not that interested. They spam apply to you. This gives you the opportunity to let them, A, show some level of interest in the actual role that you have versus just applying. And B, it gives them, after they've shown that interest, they've already distinguished them from the broad talent pool. But then it gives them the ability to expand on who they are beyond the resume. And that's incredibly valuable. We all know, think about yourself as a person. Your resume does not encapsulate who you are and how good you'd be for a specific job. Them speaking it out does. So it just allows them, if they take the effort and if they are a good fit, to really separate from the rest of the talent pool. And that's why they ended up liking it. And to be frank, the ones that didn't, it's actually pretty polarizing. The small subset that didn't usually rated it as like a 1 or a 2. There wasn't a lot of middle ground. And those people, they're kind of, they don't like technology. Like, I don't think that AI should be interviewing people for a job. They're just kind of against the concept. And it's a very small pool, but you will hear from those people, just to like let people know as you're going into this world, you're gonna hear some of these stories, but the anecdotes in this case don't always match. So just making sure that you're kind of watching this experience with your talent closely, because we definitely do, and it's important for us as well.
Yeah, and that's also like why there are certain types of jobs you wouldn't even think about using AI to have the first interaction with a candidate, depending on the type of role. So you have to be smart about where you deploy this and where you don't deploy this. I think the other thing too is the benefit this has for the recruiter, which is by the time they actually get on the phone with somebody, they've got all this information, and we'll show you what the screening report looks like, all this information, and you can have a much more substantive, personal conversation because you've gotten all of sort of the knockout stuff and the high level questions out of the way, and then you can have a much more, I think, fruitful engagement with the candidates. So, all right, that's a lot of stage setting. So now we can sort of walk through, we can kind of walk through how this looks in the product. So
All
let's.
right, so let's go through all that. So again, yes, the kind of the rest of this session is all about talking about the actual product and how this displays itself. So we talked a little bit about finding the best candidates. That isn't just a searching and matching problem. They're making it clear to your recruiters who are going to be the best is something that we can do in an automated way. And then they can also use AI to help them in their day-to-day job. So this is an example of our enrichment agent, where as soon as someone comes into the system, we want to have it summarize the candidate's resume and create a profile. So now every time one of your recruiters comes into Bullhorn and looks at a candidate, they don't have to look at the whole resume. You can even put this in the list, but you can easily just see a summary, and it happens every time. And then the same thing is true. And I think a lot of the people on this call already are using this tool. So just as a point of clarification, what we're going to show is a blend of some tools that are included and just about all of you have got access to. Other tools are going to be solutions that take more time to set up that you would invest in. But these things where you automatically summarize and use kind of the generative content, these are available kind of as part of the tool for most of you. So this would be an example of an individual user using one of these tools to get some information. Of course, they can choose what that is. And then the same thing applies on the job. So when our candidates come in, they're usually incomplete. When your jobs come in, they're often incomplete. In the same way, you could have this happen every time, or you could allow end users to automatically do it. So now we've got our candidates in properly and our jobs in properly. Now we're going to go through the process of identifying candidates. And again, we're talking about these two paradigms. One is things happen automatically. The other is AI helps to assist people in doing their jobs. So this would be an example of when I come to a job, I immediately see the best fit matches. And then I can then go refine that search because maybe there's some information that wasn't on the job or that I know I need to do. And then I can see the list ordered by the best fit matches. And the same thing can happen automatically through automation. So this is trying to kind of illustrate the idea that whatever tool your end users are using, your agents should be using as well. Because when your agents find the best fit match, it should be the exact same way as when your candidates are finding the best fit match. So we've gone through the process, jobs come in, we've cleaned up the candidates, cleaned up the job, identified the best potential candidates. Now we can automate the process of sending a personalized message directly to the candidate. So in this case, we've put a little bit of information about the candidate, a little bit of information about the job, obviously trying to display some level of personalization. And this is much more personalized. Kind of the old way is you've got templates with merge tokens. Now you can really make this feel like it was a personalized message.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things in here, right? Like even if you go back to the sourcing bit, it's you've got a model that is automatically matching folks, and then you are using automation to engage that talent. There's a level of trust that is required there because the model is making those recommendations, and it's the same thing with personalizing messages. So there's a level of trust that when you're using generative AI to build those that they're accurate. But I would argue that the way that you arrive at a high level of trust is by iterating, and by experimenting and by locking in the right job descriptions, the right queries, the right prompts. And you get over time this sort of like fear of, oh, what if it sends it to the wrong candidate? Or what if the message isn't right? You overcome that by experimenting and then locking in the things that make it super accurate. And that's part of the process. And I think that everybody needs to, and that's also a thing that, we will help with, because I think, just delivering tools and tech to customers and saying, good luck putting it together and experimenting on your own and finding the right prompts and making sure that your queries are accurate and all that stuff. Like that's sort of a recipe for not getting the right outcome and not getting the adoption that you want. And so I think that's just something to think through. There is an iterative aspect to this, and there's a partnership aspect too with us to help you sort of assemble the pieces in a way that you feel very comfortable, and that you're engaging the right candidates at the right time with the right message, and you feel comfortable because you've proven that it's accurate.
And that's a really good point. So, like, in terms of the partnership, one of the things that we've learned, this goes to the partnership and the changing role of your employees. One of the things that we saw very early on is the quality of the job description was dramatically impacting the match quality and the personalized messaging. So one of the things that your people might be more focused on now is when you actually know something about a customer or details that aren't in a job description, it's actually that much more important to make sure that they are entered. So this is one of those cases where they might do a little bit more upfront, but it makes everything else in that process work better. They can do it without it. It'll still work. But in terms of optimization and getting to the next level and squeezing out the most productivity and outcomes, this is where you'll start to learn the key parts of the role are going to differ a little bit from where they are today. All right, so then we've sent out our message, and now here's an example of this screening agent that we've been alluding to quite a bit, which how most customers have this set up is there's a handful of close-ended, obvious questions that you might want to ask. Work authorization, location, things where there's not really a lot of detail to be added. So we've got that initial screening process kind of blended between a chat interface where they enter some basic information, and then a voice discussion where you go through more open-ended questions. And again, this is done through working with our customers. What we found was about 40% of applicants will go through the chat, but about only half of those will make it through the voice screening, just because of the time that they've got allotted. And if you think about some of those closed-ended questions, work authorization, payment, pay requirements, location, those are actually some of the most important things you need to know about a person for future matches. So getting that in a larger subset of people and then getting the more detailed overview is very intentional. So that's kind of how this process works, where they would ask a handful of questions back through. And of course, we've only got a limited amount of time. There's a whole demo. This, we could spend an hour just talking about this screening agent. But this is a key part of the process that really helps to accelerate all the next steps. Once they've gone through that process, when they score a certain level, now they get their next steps in the process to see that their next step is to do an interview with the recruiter. And that's based on how well they performed in that screening. And then they can just book time. So now, again, if you think about the recruiter's role, they really didn't need to get involved from once the job's been entered until they have a list of qualified candidates on their calendar. And then now I see that call. I'm about to get on with this candidate. And I guess his name is James Pringle here. I can go look at his profile and not just see all the key information, also see the exact qualifications for this job. So imagine just the difference in the role from picking up the phone and calling someone blind based on their resume versus picking up someone who's shown that they're interested in the role, shown that they've got qualifications that separate them from the rest of the pack, and you already know all the basic questions. That call is a completely different call than it was prior to AI being involved. And it's a much more personalized one.
Totally. And there's, speaking of iteration, like the way it scores and how you choose to do it, like there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, right? You can give an actual score, you can say, high, medium, low. There's all sorts of things you can do here. But the moral of the story is that you actually can arrive at a pretty good indicator of somebody's fit, at least to talk to a recruiter. Maybe not, are they going to ultimately be successful in the role? But it is definitely possible in order to screen these folks out, no matter how you score, to optimize the time. And I know folks sometimes they get uncomfortable with like seeing a number here and all this different stuff. There's a lot of different ways that you can do that, and there's a lot of iteration that's required to like to make it work for how you want. But it is 100%, not even a question, that you can improve the ability to talk to a qualified person by doing this. And in a way, and I'm just going to say it again because we said it before, and in a way that the talent feels like, okay, that was actually a pretty good experience. Definitely possible.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've gone through this process. Almost all of it's automated. Now the next step is pitching this candidate to the client. So in a lot of cases, we were talking VMS. Maybe this pitch just goes into your little text box, or maybe you actually are doing a retail role and you have the ability to talk to the hiring manager. There's just another opportunity for AI to help them. But this is one of the areas where we do think it's very important for the recruiter to be involved. Closing the candidate and selling that candidate to your customer, these are really important parts for the humans right now. The AIs can help them, but we like to have them involved, and we think that our customers do as well. That's our quick demo. And as you saw, that kind of covers the gamut of all the different solutions. And we think that while there are a lot of different point solutions out there that allow you to complete kind of this big, hard problem, which is the thing that your people do thousands of times every day, which is get a job, do all the steps necessary to submit a candidate. That's what Bullhorn's really focused on. There's a lot of different point solutions out there. But we think this core part is something that we should really be delivering to you, our customers. I don't think you
Yeah,
want
that's myth three, right? Myth one is that it replaces recruiters. No, it will elevate and amplify the recruiter, as I think we've shown today. The talent actually likes it. And the third is that, sure, you can buy point solutions, right? Like, our voice agent is running on an LLM that other voice agents run on. There's a lot of them. But I don't think that that's the right way to evaluate how, this should sort of come together, because you don't want to be in a position where you have got all of these separate and distinct agents or features or companies or whatever. And then all of a sudden, the burden is on you to put them together in the right way, to make sure that they're working in harmony, that they're in the right spot in the process. That is a lot of work. And fundamentally, this is why, Jason and I believe that this is a core part of the platform, and it should be orchestrated as part of the platform, not the burden on the customer to go and evaluate and find a whole bunch of different point solutions, figure out how to plug them in. You got to build an integration to all of them. You have to put them in the right spot in the workflow. And then there's the bit of, okay, how do you actually measure whether or not this whole thing is actually effective? That means you have to get the data out of the agents and into some place where you can consolidate it into a dashboard. And so this is fundamentally why I think, Bullhorn or not Bullhorn, there is a fundamental to SaaS is going to win because of this, because it enables you to orchestrate and make all this stuff work in harmony. And so I think that that's an important point. If you're just evaluating point solution by point solution, sure, you could be like, oh, I'll get a voice agent from here and I'll get a scheduling agent from there or whatever. But the ability to actually achieve that compounding productivity, it's going to be hampered if you have to do everything I said, which is sort of stitching it all together. To that point, this is important. And I've said it a couple of times where, you've now got to supervise the agents that are doing a bunch of work. And you have to have visibility into how effective that process is. And this is where, the future of Bullhorn Analytics really is about helping you understand the productivity of the agents and then the return on the investment of all of this stuff working together. And so, you can imagine a dashboard where you can double click into how many screens have been done, or over time, are you trending in the right direction? You can double click into all the new KPIs that Jason was talking about and the right way to measure your business. And this is because it's all on one platform, and all of the stuff that is being orchestrated by automation and all of the agents working together end up actually giving you the visibility into the ROI of all of this, but also helping point you at, okay, I've got to focus here. I've got to double click here. This looks like an area that, I might need to go in action.
Yep. That's it. So it's all about not just managing the agents, but the agent's impact on your business, understanding it, because an agent may be doing a bunch of activity, which you could get, but you need to know how that affects your overall workflow, your overall funnel, your placements per recruiter, your fill rate, all of the other metrics that you're already tracking in the core systems today. So we are almost to questions. I think the key points here is that we can do these together, but I think AI is really just an evolution of what you're doing today. It's the next step in automation. You're just unlocking new capabilities. We're going to deliver this. Bullhorn is the AI layer for recruitment. We are focused on tackling your hardest problems and having AI help you to get through those. And we're here with the technology and ready to help assemble all of that.
Yeah, I think that last bit is really important, for not to sort of say what I've already said, but I will underscore it, because it is overwhelming, right? There's all these agents that are doing all of these different pieces of the puzzle. You may want to, deploy agents differently for VMS jobs than you do for, other higher end professional jobs. There's different matching requirements for, a commercial job than there is for a professional job. And there's all these, like, I guess, nuances of the world that we all live in, and tuning the AI to actually achieve the result that you want. It's not like you flip a switch and voila, right? It is a process. It requires iteration and time. And that's why I think that's so important, and it's also sort of an evolution for us as well as a software provider, which is, we we are not in the business of just giving you the technology and saying good luck. We're in the business of giving you the technology, helping you experiment, helping you iterate, and helping you assemble that puzzle. And I think that's super important because it's going to require that investment on your side also to, to actually achieve these outcomes. And it's our goal and job to partner with you, not only on the tech side, but also on the value realization side as well.
Absolutely. All
So,
right, we've got
yeah, so we
5 minutes for rapid
question.
fire questions. We've got quite a few. One that's asked a few times, does it work on Recruitment Cloud? So that's Bullhorn on Salesforce, essentially. And it does, yes. So the same concepts apply. The exact way the software is delivered might be a little different, but the exact same concepts of taking everyone through your key processes is the same. So just to pull that up again, all of this works very similarly in Salesforce or Recruitment Cloud as it does on Bullhorn platform.
Yeah, and I think for folks that are, using Salesforce, there is this Agentforce concept, where Agentforce can there's overlap, right, with some of the orchestration and developing the flows on Agentforce. And, we're very happy to be one of the earliest adopters of Agentforce, and we can help you navigate that as well. And it's very similar to what I just said. Like you have to assemble the pieces slightly differently on Salesforce than you assemble them on the Bullhorn platform, but fundamentally the puzzle pieces are the same. And and the agents, whether or not they're Salesforce native agents or the Bullhorn agents, is sort of like it's not necessarily the important point. The important point is that you put them in the right spot in the workflow, and that we help you sort of harmonize that to achieve the outcome, which we're doing equally on both platforms.
Another one about the matching agent beyond the ATS database. Yes, we are integrated with most of the largest job boards. And the way that works is you can set up these agents to automatically run and present you with those people. It doesn't automatically add them because of the quality and cost prohibitions from the job boards. But yes, can do all of them.
Yeah, and we had our there's a couple questions in here about how the search and match works too. We had I think maybe 2 webinars ago or something, we sort of deep dive on the search and match stuff. And we didn't we talked today a lot about the process of top of funnel screening and new applicants. There's a lot more to that matching agent also around redeployment and identifying the right people that are already in your database to decrease the cost of candidate acquisition. This was more of a how do you get to an agentic flow than it was a deep dive on matching. But we've talked about that before, and I think that's important to mention as well because you know it's not like your goal is to only respond to people that are applying to jobs, right? I mean, you've got other ways to find the right candidates and the right profile and put them to work. And the matching agent does all of that, right? It's looking at who is in your database, whether they came from a job board or an application or some other way, and helping you find the right people.
Yep. And then there's a number of questions just around what's available and pricing. Everything we showed, this whole process is available today using Bullhorn Solutions. You can get that now. And then as far as the exact pricing, there are different levels to this. So the journey that we described about people going from digitization, automation, and so forth, like not everybody's ready to jump to the end. So there are a variety of different ways that you can add this into your solution, some of which is included in Bullhorn, some of which you would add. All of that and a more detailed demo, right? Like we flew through this, admittedly. There's a lot more to learn. All of that, your account manager will be able to help with that.
Definitely.
Um, let's see.
Let's see.
Does the data collected right back to Bullhorn and the screens? The chat writes directly back to fields, the voice, the entire transcript, the score, all writes back to notes, and then the score is in a specific field. That is one thing we didn't show. We will at some point in the future be extracting concepts from free text and updating direct fields. Today, it's the direct fields that are answered in the chat are written back.
There's a lot of overlap in these questions, so I'm just
Yeah.
trying to see what we may have missed here.
Oh, types of roles. This is a good one. And just like this is role type and how to think about it in your business. As you heard, we talked quite a bit about VMS jobs. We are finding that most of our customers, because it's the low-hanging fruit and the jobs that get the least effort today and are the highest volume, lowest margin, that's where most people are starting on this. And then in terms of types of roles, we have seen people use these tools for every different level, probably like director, VP, professional level up. They usually do not yet. But for like engineer roles, all the way to more of the blue collar or entry level light industrial style roles, all of which we've seen healthcare as well. So we haven't seen an area where either the people will refuse to do it. In every area, we've had about the same level of conversion rate, or where it wasn't able to have a productive conversation. Um, so we haven't identified clearly any roles where it's a really poor fit. But I think the most important part is where it's a good fit in your business and where you think you can get the most opportunity and redeploy your recruiter's talent elsewhere. And I think we're over time now. So we'll follow up with some additional answers, especially those that have their name and information. We can follow up directly.
Yeah, lots of questions on price and stuff too. If there's value, there's cost, right? But we're not going to cover pricing in depth here. So I'll take that to mean you see that this is exciting and you should reach out to your account managers and you should have that conversation with them.
Right.
Feel like we did our job, Jason, if somebody's talking with
Yes.
us.
Well, thank you so much, Jason and Matt, once again for this fantastic session today. And thank you all for joining us as well. You will receive an email tomorrow with the recording of the session and some additional AI resources. We do have a few more AI webinars coming up, one next week called the AI in Action series, which will be on search and match. So definitely look out for that in your email tomorrow. Thank you again, and everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks,
Thank you.
Thanks,
guys.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank